The deep night enveloped the road like a shroud of darkness, and the headlights of my car barely pierced through the gloom. I was driving along a narrow road that passed by the old cemetery on the outskirts of town. The ominous trees lining the road seemed like ghosts, watching my every move, and the branches scraped against the body of my car like sinister fingers trying to hold me back. As I approached the cemetery, a sense of uneasy tremors washed over me. The fog hanging over the graves created an eerie atmosphere, and the stone angels lining the road seemed like silent observers of this strange spectacle. But something made me stop and look ahead. And there, in the middle of the road, she stood, a woman in a white dress, her form piercing through the darkness. She seemed so real yet so unreal, like a ghost from my darkest nightmares. Her hair flowed gently over her shoulders, and her eyes, illuminated by the pale light of the moon, stared at me as if they could see into my soul. My heart sank as she began to move towards me. I was paralyzed with fear, but my body acted on instinct as I suddenly pressed the gas pedal, trying to accelerate and escape from this haunting vision. But she didn't relent, her silhouette following my car like a ghost that wouldn't let go of its prey. My only thought was to escape. I sharply turned left, crashing through the cemetery gates, and plunged into the world of darkness and the dead. The shadows cast by the graves seemed alive, and I felt fear engulfing me as I raced forward, trying to find refuge from this nightmarish reality. But as I ventured deeper into the cemetery, I realized that this was only part of the story. Suddenly, ghosts of the deceased began to appear around me, their piercing gazes flashing in the darkness like stars in the night sky. They moaned and whispered, and their ghostly hands reached out to me as if they wanted to say or do something. I rushed forward, trying to find a way out of this nightmare, but the cemetery seemed like an endless maze. Shadows surrounded me from all sides, and I felt like they wanted to swallow me whole, to make me a part of this cursed place forever. Finally, I saw a glimmer of light in the distance. I realized it was an exit, and I dashed towards it, as if it were my last hope of salvation. When I emerged from the darkness of the cemetery, I stopped the car and looked back to make sure I was alone. But the place I had just been seemed so distant and unwelcoming, now that I felt a shiver of fear run down my spine. That evening left me with an indescribable sense of unease and horror. I knew I would never be able to forget what I had seen, and that the shadows of the dead would always haunt me in my nightmares.